At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were offered plenty of advice on how to protect ourselves and others. We needed to wash our hands. Oh, and clean surfaces all the time. Don't forget those masks. One kangaroo apart, please. Also, ventilation and outdoor everything. However, it was difficult to get a sense of which measures might have the biggest impact and how they might work in combination. We wanted to create a tool that would allow our readers to visualize the different options. The datasets available at the time were quite patchy though. As Alberto Cairo says, we should certainly do good with data, but only after we've thoroughly made sure that our data is good. In October 2020, we started working with members of the UK government's Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, SAGE. They painstakingly elicited opinions from a group of experts who could synthesise the limited evidence there was, add their own knowledge of the likely transmission rates, and help us to create a dataset that would underpin our visualisation tool. Meanwhile, I started where I usually do, sketching with a tablet and stylus. I find it the best way of getting down ideas and sharing them quickly. We were interested in showing multiple different pathways for virus transmission, and we explored a few different ways of presenting this, with width of arrows, number of dots flying across the screen, etc. Visualization can make uncertain data look too exact, so our favourite design quickly became a colour scale. We wanted to intentionally make it hard for the viewer to focus on exact values, instead encouraging them to get a sense of the relative differences. As Andy Kirk says, sometimes we do not need to read values precisely because it is more important just to get the gist. Over the next 3 months, while the data was being collected, we worked on a static draft render of the graphic. It's not too far from our final tool. It has a set of drop-downs at the top to select scenarios and circular buttons in the diagram for each of the protective measures that can be applied, like masks and hand hygiene. And then, in early May, the research team provided us with some pretty fascinating data to dive into. In the end, they consulted 26 experts in 2 rounds, asking them for every value we needed in the diagram and how certain they were. Later that week, I threw the SVG of the graphic and the data into D3, combined everything together and expectantly booted up the first real data version of the graphic. 8 months down the line, and we could finally see that everything looked kind of fine. Even coughing, which is definitely not fine, didn't look too bad. That person on the right is full 100% pink, but because the first pathway splits in 3, then they only join together at the far right, the whole diagram still looks really washed out. We considered a few different things, using a log scale for example, although this felt trickier to understand. In the end, we added a nasty dark purple colour to the top end of the linear scale, with a fairly swift transition from light to dark pink at the bottom end. We added in the protective measures. Clicking the little icons in circles turns them on and off, creating a barrier for the different flows. It's probably a pretty overwhelming display to start with, so we added a 9-step intro, building up the diagram slowly. At this stage, we had a mostly functional graphic, so we did our main tranche of testing. We asked 6 people, with a range of different backgrounds, to sit down with the graphic and talk through their experiences using it. Following their feedback, we removed the 3 coloured panels in the background for the 3 different zones of the diagram. People didn't really notice it, and it was a layer of complexity that we didn't need. Almost everyone was confused by the 2-step approach we had taken to the different mask types, with a drop-down and a button. In the end, we went for usability over visual appeal, and changed every protective measure into a single drop-down menu, instead of combining menus with buttons. And the last major change was to significantly shorten and simplify the intro from 9 steps to 3. The papers detailing the research and why we made the graphic went through our usual rigorous peer review process over the next few months. And we finally published the graphic and supporting papers on the 1st of December 2021, more than a full year since our first conversations about the graphic. We were really happy with the resulting tool. It was well received in the press and on social media, and received nearly 100,000 page views in the first month of publication, which is quite high for us. A few things that I've learned from this project. Firstly, starting with the visuals in mind allowed us to focus on exactly what data we needed. I think the BMJ will be looking for more opportunities to be proactive and do visualization-led content, not just visualizing the research that comes our way. Also, perhaps we should always be thinking, if the data isn't there, can we find or create it? As we know from D'Ignacio and Klein's book, Data Feminism, some groups of people are vastly underrepresented in existing data sets, so this is important from that perspective too, although data collection can take a long time. Lastly, I underestimated how quickly people would pick up the tool and made the intro too long, and I didn't expect the confusion over the combination of a drop-down and a button. When designing a system like this, we know exactly how it works, so we can become blind to what a user expects. Testing helps us to discover these minor changes that can have a big impact on usability. I'm very grateful to Alex Freeman from Cambridge University, who helped us organise this testing. You can see this graphic, along with many others that we publish, at bmj.com/infographics, or follow me on Twitter for occasional commentary on the graphics that we publish. Thank you for your attention.